ladies to you. They'll be making their rounds before we get into the details. The Daily Graphic says 2023 economic policy ambitious revenue drive underway, highlighting some of the key things that the finance minister talked about to parliamentarians yesterday, and it takes a big part of the paper's front banner. Government picks graphic to produce paper. Central Tongu lack of roads undermines development, and there are some of the finance minister's responses in there as well. Ghanaian Times pretty much the same. 2023 budget economic policy. Government plans massive expenditure cuts, projects to expand to spend 205,000 Ghana cedis plus in millions to finance the budget. So the highlights also on the page: brace up for hardship minority to Ghanaians. The back pages of the two papers dedicated to sports and the Black Stars performance against Portugal last night. Republic Press says government freezes jobs, and there's another story on Vice President Bawumia launching an employable skills program to benefit young people in Ahafo. And this is the controversial topic we've been talking about since yesterday. VAR out of sight as bad refereeing helps Portugal. Was it bad refereeing? Was it a penalty? Was it not? Undecided about that. Meanwhile, the Nigerians and South Africans are having a field day with that penalty awarded to Ghana, referencing bitter memories for the two countries there. And more stories in the Daily Analyst. The government announced cost-cutting measures to save economy. Bawumia launches youth training job placement program for 1,200 youth. 2023 budget, government promises to revive economy, reduces e-levy from 1.5 to 1%, hopeful of securing IMF deal. MDA's others directed to cut fuel allocations by 50%. And there is another story on the GJA and IFJ organizing a seminar on digital organizing and trade union reforms for journalists. So these are the four papers I have with me this morning. We'll be looking at some of the stories. I'll introduce my panel. Strong ladies. I have with me Akosua Hansen, artistic activist, writer and creator of graphic novel series Ako.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Shamima Muslim, member of the Citizens Coalition, development communication specialist. Hi, Shams.
Hello, my sister.
How are we this morning?
We are very happy. We're very happy.
Because it was perfectly timed, wasn't it? It's like it wasn't the win that we were looking for. But I feel so good. I feel so proud. It's like I actually, it was more like a win because they did so well. But I'll start with your rant for the day before we get into the sports, and then we'll get into the details of what the finance minister said. What are your thoughts? Who wants to go first today?
I think mine is a lighter thing today.
Yes.
It's less a rant, but more to highlight this. As you said, today is 25th of November, and today marks the beginning of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And this is something that happens every year from the 25th of November to the 10th of December, where you generally raise awareness about gender-based violence and ending gender-based violence. Now, gender-based violence, as we know, is one of the most prevalent human rights abuses in human history. Its effects, physical, economical, psychological, they have short-term, long-term effects. And always, inhibits the victims from fully, and equally and freely participating in society and living the highest quality of lives. 1 in 3 women, according to the UN, has at least experienced one form of gender-based violence in their lives. And when we talk about gender-based violence, I also want to highlight the fact that this also does include people of the gender men and boyhood. So, for instance, situations where boys are abused, sexually abused or raped, we, as a society, we do not allow them to recognize that has actually been an abuse. A lot of people will tell you, a lot of boys will tell you, my first sexual experience was with this older woman or a house help in the house or whatever. And then their friends make them feel that, oh yeah, Charlie, you big guy. But actually what has happened to you is you have been abused, and you may not at that time be allowed to properly, situate it, but then the effects do happen when you go. The women that you live lives with feel the effects because of that, So when we talk about gender-based violence, those are also the stories that are involved. The way we streamline how different genders are supposed to respond to each other, and also the violence we perpetrate on each other because of these things. So I want us to, you know, bring attention to that. There's these 16 days. There's a lot of things happening in Accra. People are doing plays. People are doing panel discussions. People are bringing, you know, media people together to, you know, raise more awareness. So be involved wherever you are.
Should we expect the brides on the high street again this year? Because I remember one year people wore gowns with blood.
Okay.
And it was such a stark thing to see on the Atamils High Street. Because you're driving past and you just see someone wearing a wedding dress, a bloody wedding dress. And it was so striking. Yes. It was so striking. Yes. So 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. We'll be looking forward to some of those conversations, even at this table in the coming days. Shams,
right?
What's your?
But Akosha, that was not a light issue. I think that's a very
not light, right?
Yes,
profound,
it's a very profound
yes
intervention, and we thank you for really, you know, reminding all of us that we are in the month of activism. Yes. So my rant is also like a reflection, and it's from the budget we had yesterday, and the fact that it just brings to fore again the very critical role the fourth sector, which is like civil society and citizens activism, play in holding governments accountable, if only governments will not become intransigent and listen. Because a lot of the in-your-face moments and from some of the decisions like the e-levy that the finance minister now had to come back to review, had they just listened with their hearts, with their heads, with their hands, for, you know, to what citizens were telling you, we wouldn't have been in this, you know, situation. It's been one whole year, and we have expended so much money in even deploying, you know, the infrastructure to operationalize the e-levy. And we are back to a point where you now concede that perhaps you shouldn't have, you know, put even the rate where you put it. So it raises the intolerance that we see in governance and government's inability to truly engage, you know, civil society and look to their work with some level of cooperation. Because civil society also within this same period have raised concerns about the policies government, you know, was implementing. We heard statements like civil society organizations think they know it all. They often go and take money from other vested interest group, and they try to, you know, push it down the throat. But as you see, they say pregnancy, it is a subang, it is a nyinseng. It will still come out. No matter how much you try to hide a pregnancy, it will still come out. And today we are where we are, where government is having to go back on some of its own words. And the lesson here is that no matter how much government thinks that they are in control, no matter how government feels that they have privileged information that we ordinary and average citizens do not have, no matter how much they are so convinced that their programs and policies are only to the best interest of the Ghanaian, when the Ghanaian gets up to speak, when civil society actors who have specialized in specific areas in our economy, when they draw your attention to some loopholes and some, you know, what do you call it, traps, and to some dangers ahead, you must imbibe a certain spirit of humility to hear and meet people halfway, and not be so intransigent as to insist on your position solely because it is your position. That is my rant this morning. Let government listen, and when they listen, let them truly hear what the people are saying. Let them, you know, deploy. They have national security. They must be able to have a hold on the pulse of Ghanaians and the citizens at every point in time. And that must, as a matter of necessity, reflect in the plans and programs that they roll out.
So Shams has brought us squarely into issues of the day. Yesterday, Finance Minister Ken Walter appeared before MPs to lay out government's fiscal plan for the year 2023. He outlined some key measures that government is going to embrace to help the economy recover from the shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic and also the Russia-Ukraine war, which the government still blames for the situation of the current economy. And he made some comments regarding the e-levy. Shamima referred to it earlier, saying basically that was being reduced from the 1.5% that it was previously at to 1%, and the threshold of 100 Ghana cedis daily, which had been put in place to cushion, at the time we were told about 40% of Ghanaians who only operated within that 100 Ghana cedi a day space, has now been removed. Let's listen to some of the things the finance minister said in Parliament yesterday, and we'll be back to continue their conversation.
The government has received several proposals for review of the electronic transfer levy and is working closely with all stakeholders to evaluate the impact of the levy in order to decide on the next line of action, which would include revision of the various exclusions. As a first step, however, the headline rate will be reduced to 1% of the transaction value alongside the removal of the daily threshold. To this end, the income tax regime will undergo reforms to, among others, review the upper limits for vehicle benefits and introduce an additional income tax bracket of 35%.
So, Ken Oforiatta, the ladies, so we heard what the finance minister said. Initially, there was some people were struggling to understand what the threshold comment meant. I understood it to mean that now, no matter how much you send in a day, you pay the 1% e-levy. So is that the understanding that you also got? Because now, if you're sending 20 cedis, you pay 1%. If you send 30 cedis, you pay 1%. And there's no ceiling.
I mean, I was also wondering about that. So I just asked you. So I'm not sure. But if that's what it is, the reduction from 1.5% to 1% and removing this threshold to, all amounts actually worsens the situation, right? That means on anything, like you're saying, less than 100, at first was 100, anything less than 100, that tax is going to be put in the e-levy. And with what Shamima was saying about the intransigence, right? I feel like they are still being intolerable. I feel like how it's being understood about the failure of this e-levy, tax system.
Has it failed?
Well, they are conceding in a way, but they are not conceding in the sense it feels like this was going to be a good plan, but then the people did not support, or the other politicians, or the minority also did not. The majority, did not support. So therefore, we did not allow the program to run its course for it to be beneficial. I don't think they still see that this is actually not a productive thing. When I say not a productive thing, the VAT has also increased, right? 15% now, right? So what's basically happening is goods and services is going to become more expensive. People are going to have to spend more. People can save more. And in all of this, the salary structures are not increasing. If anything, they are decreasing or just remaining the same in a flat line. So what you're doing, in essence, is you're making it very difficult for the citizenry to move. The citizenry, who are the ones, supposed to make sure money is circulating, is moving, is productive. You say you want to, revive the economy, but all of these things make it more stringent, so I don't exactly see the improvement where that is, if this is what it is, right?
On the contrary, the finance minister is confident that the measures they are putting in place is going to work. There was a provision for funding for 30,000 youth-led businesses. The graphic referred to it. Boosting domestic revenue by boosting local production and cutting spending. And there was quite an elaborate cut to spending, saying the number of V8s that are allowed to travel will be reduced, fuel allocation for those who used to get them, and state-owned enterprises and staff will be cut down to 50%. And they believe that all these things will help us manage our monies in a better way. You don't think that will do it?
Those are also good sides. I think those are also other sides of the budget. I'm definitely full on for, boosting our productive capacity, right? But then the tax still does affect things. I do also hear the expenditures being cut. mean, I feel like it should be cut more, but I'm proud that that's actually happening. But it still doesn't mean that these effects would still not be there. If you are trying to make a boost the economy, make it more productive, right? We are going to produce our own rice, our own oil, our own vegetables, our own, we also need to, the main point is going to the consumer. The consumer who is going to spend is going to be spending more. There's going to be added tax. But then what they are also earning, the income is also not increasing. So it's like you're boosting on one end, but then causing a stringent on the other end. So I don't know how, that's going to play out, right?
Right, Shams. What your thoughts? Yesterday, the finance minister, despite all the back and forth over he should be sacked, he should be left in post until after the IMF negotiations and all that. He tells us the IMF negotiations are going well and that some agreements have been reached already and there is already a clear pathway to an agreement about what we want the IMF deal to achieve for the country. He also laid out what he thinks the country could benefit from cuts in the current government spending structure and other things that are meant to help the youth, help vulnerable people. LEAP is supposed to continue and be improved. School feeding supposed to be improved in line with the new, so the current issues that we have. No specific figure was given about any increases perhaps in the monies that will be spent on the school feeding. But these are surely positive signals in the budget. Do you think that we can do this? 2023, the minority said would not be any better, but government remains hopeful.
I think that the concession by the president himself that we are in a crisis situation and the recognition that we will not be out of the rut in terms of our debt sustainability status, within the next 6 years, is in itself an indication that whatever plans and programs and policies that come up in next year's budget will in no way breach the gap, the inequality gap that is, widening by the minute. I think that what the ministry might hope to achieve is to try and level out some of the disparities that has been created as a result of government programs and, of course, external factors. I just want to read out to you some of the key intervention areas, and then I'll make a point. So the finance minister identified, I think, about 7 areas that they were going to focus on in order to, bring Ghana out of this crisis we find ourselves. One was to aggressively mobilize domestic revenue, streamline and rationalize expenditures, boost local productive capacity, promote and diversify exports, protect the poor and vulnerable, expand digital and climate responsive physical infrastructure, and implement structural and public sector reforms. Thelma, which of these interventions haven't we heard in previous budgets? In fact, in government's past, these have been the foundational problems of our economy. These were the same issues that were diagnosed about our Gadgetsburg economy, for which President Akufo-Addo promised to come and change the structure that delivers, this kind of output where we are overly reliant on foreign input. So for me, any business forecaster, anybody, any citizen of Ghana looking at these intervention areas and the specific activities that have been must do, and the projections must do one thing. They must break the projections into 3 and just work on a third of what is being projected to be achieved in their planning. If government is able to achieve more, then it becomes a windfall for you, because right now I think experience has taught us not to always trust government's projections, especially when they hardly I beg your pardon, when they hardly come back to tell us by way of their evaluation what impact previous interventions have made.
So you were expecting, for example, an accounting of how much e-levy, for example, would have brought us, even though we are waiting until December to have the benefits of perhaps a year.
Asked, have you received an answer on that? You rolled out an intervention which you believed so much was going to solve your revenue you fall short of that target. We don't even know up to date how much we have raised through the e-levy. And we don't know how much we expended in rolling out the infrastructure for e-levy to be operationalized. So I'm saying that in as much as we want to have a level of hope that this budget would truly deliver on its own projections, I think to err on the side of caution, Ghanaians, businesses must break down every projection into 3 parts and work with only a part.
So expect only a third.
One third.
Yes, and if anything happens,
I like the math.
Let's look at the revenue generation measures. You have made an announcement of a 2.5% value added tax. Cumulatively, the Ghanaian is going to be riddled with now 21%. So the cumulative tax, if you add the NHIA levy and all the other levies, if you went to a restaurant and you ate, the indirect tax. Now leave that and even talk about the direct tax. You're still going to pay your direct taxes. So the situation of the Ghanaian is in no way going to be ameliorated by some of these revenue generation measures.
The minister did say that it was not going to be an easy walk, and that it would get harder before it gets better.
We can't clap for that.
And all of us have to be
so should we clap?
Board.
We can't clap for that, Thelma. We can only we can only express. Are you happy? Can you clap for that? If you are being told that it's going to be get worse, for Black Stars, when we get there, those are the things we need to at least ease the pain. But in terms of where we are now and where we are going, if you listen to any big businesses, it's just a very uncertain time.
We appear to have listened. I mean, people raised issues about our tax regimes and the tax holidays and all these free the timelines we give to people not to pay taxes, and then you see the businesses just before the time lapses changing hands and folding up and expatriating, only for new ones to come on board. The minister said we are going to review all these things and perhaps we are not going to give any more tax holidays. And that's why money's come into the system.
Exactly.
We asked for it.
But these things are not, that's why I'm saying that, you know, we are very intransigent, are not things that have not been raised. I have heard Imani raise these issues of this unbridled tax breaks we give to businesses. We know them, but because there are always vested interests in the free zones things, they are supposed to be producing locally. We have heard from, worker unions and local businesses argue and tell us that the so-called free zones are importing products, you know, sometimes, and just repackaging. That these are things we must look into and then address if we're truly to generate trust and believe in the citizen that what you're saying you will do. Because in the first instance, you are the one who created these policies that give all of these, you know, leeway to holidays to foreign, you know, interest companies. Now you come back to the issue of the expenditure cuts. By now, everything must be data and science and not English. Okay? By now, you should be telling us specifically which are the big government expense areas and what you hope to recoup from some of these interventions. When you mention and you highlight, well, these are good because there's so much unnecessary expenditure, at the ministries, departments, agencies. So I am happy, but these are all the small things. Okay, so yesterday I asked. You said that for cross-country, travel, no more V8, no more V6.
Except for the essential ones.
The problem has always been with the implementation. Because we have heard earlier on where government appointees, their salaries have been reduced. Do you know how much we have gained from all the, salary cuts?
It's not available
and
to me.
What we have used those monies for? Do you understand what I'm saying? So if you announce this for cross-country travels, I asked the question, how about cross-border travels? How about presidential travels? Because one of the key criticisms against President Akufo-Addo has been his penchant to travel via private jets at very exorbitant prices. He's even being criticized that finance minister is facing the public, a hostile public, to read a budget where he probably has been giving a no confidence, mark. The last thing he should be doing is to be traveling, whether commercial or private, to go and motivate the Black Stars. We could have met the Black Stars when they hear, no, the president doesn't have,
there was very little time
minister,
from when they were released from their clubs.
Is there. And there's technology now. Presidents across countries meet virtually. Do you understand?
Virtual meetings are supposed to become more popular. The finance minister said
so. I'm saying
they
that
will discourage travel, so
from
deploy
the head,
technology for meetings.
We must see the commitment to truly reducing government expenditure right from the presidency through to his ministers. Ministers traveling on state accounts should not be given first class or business class. If they have the money, they come up from a certain baseline quote. Okay, so these are very critical, stark measures that we must see visibly being operationalized for us to trust that truly we're going to, get the gains from these tax breaks and tax revenue measures.
For me, I'm excited about what the budget called the Economic Enclave Projects, the EEP. It's focusing on rice, poultry, tomato, maize, and vegetables through commercial farming. The plan is to cultivate up to 110,000 acres of land, and 2,000 acres of land has been cleared and serviced with irrigation facilities, according to what the finance minister told us. He alluded to the fact that the Planting for Food and Jobs has brought us so much good, and talked about having the national buffer stock supply some of these things to ensure that there is enough in the system. From experience, have those things worked, and how excited are we at the prospect of this focus, local production of rice? We import so much of these products from outside the country. Now he says the focus is on homegrown solutions, homegrown food. Will that help?
Definitely, and actually it's been a long time coming. I feel like it's when the house started burning that we realized, oh no, we should have had a river or something to,
put out the fire.
To put out the fire. This has been a long time coming. This is something that should have happened about 50 years ago. It's not now that we should realize that, we need to now focus on locally produced, food, like these basics. We always have to import these things. I was very, very excited, like I said the last time, about the One District, One Factory, initiative. I think that was also even referenced in the budget. But then I'm not sure. I've not seen or I'm not feeling the benefits of this rollout, because the whole point is we are supposed to be importing less, exporting more. There's so much, value in the things that we have, resources that we have, and unfortunately, it's now in 2022 that we are doing this. And so for me, I feel like it's a crisis situation. Therefore, you're seeing them trying to take money off other things like these aggressive domestic revenue. And when they are trying to aggressively take money from domestic sources, that's where it comes to taxes. Then we are the ones to suffer for that. But it's been a long time coming, and also other past governments. This is something that should not be political at all. If this government is starting this now, this has to continue despite whatever government comes in the next run. I mean, it's not something that we should take lightly. We shouldn't allow for this to just be a political score point, because obviously this is what we're supposed to have already been at. We'll
be joining Studio 5 for an update of the World Cup in Qatar. So in about 10 or so minutes, we'll be wrapping up from here. But I'll give you a minute each to wrap up on the budget situation, and then we can talk about the Black Stars. Happy times.
Yes, okay. We have to end on a happy note. I think that my only concluding comment is that let's be congruent, and that plans are plans to the extent that they don't find expression in real programs that lead to benefits. The foreign multilateral companies, institutions that we deal with, they measure results and they measure impact. Promises and plans and programs are as good as the results as the impact. For now, things are hard. If government says they're going to roll out these policies, let us see them happening. And let us also narrow the inconsistencies, because if you're going to roll out some of these important interventions, and yet in another breath, as I heard the Deputy Finance Minister said, some critical projects, new projects, are supposed to be on
when we are
hold.
told that no new agencies will be opened, no new interventions will be introduced in the next fiscal year, because there's just not the funds available.
Provide us information, you know, carry us along, because right now what citizens need is information so they can really plan out their very, you know, volatile lives.
Akosia,
I'll
your
say,
last word on
I mean,
finance.
I second everything, but as she's saying, I second accountability. You know, if you're saying these things, you need to be accountable to the people in how you're going to be rolling out these things, that measuring the impact and letting us know. The government's expenditure especially, they are saying no hampers, no VAs. We hope that there will be the accountability and the implementation. This is not just hearsay and not things that are hidden from us that we won't know, you know, because they can say these things, but then we don't know what happens when they, you know. So I hope for accountability, and I hope that we would also continue to try to hold them accountable, and they have to.
So
they have to be.
there's a very the graphic sport and the Ghanaian Times Sports, GT Sports, both the back pages, there's a very, you know, vast difference of how they captioned yesterday's game against Portugal. The graphic saying the gallant stars lose to Portugal. So the word gallant is here. Very happy with the graphic team. Gallant stars lose to Portugal. And then the Ghanaian Times came to say sloppy.
Sloppy. No, it's not.
So gallant
sloppy.
and sloppy, two very, very different opinions expressed here. It was the Republic Press that brought out the issue of the VAR out of sight and the issues concerning bad refereeing. CAF is resolute in the fact that, listen, it was early in the second half of the game. There was every opportunity, even if we felt cheated, for that goal, for that penalty that Ronaldo took, to make up for the goal and score more goals. Kasane be brave, plenty talking, and I am just proud.
Because from the same international networks, was looking at them because maybe we are more emotional. The BB said that this was, even if it was a penalty, it was a very light penalty because they were almost at the ball at the same time.
Yeah.
So as to whether whose foot touched the ball before who, it's such a negligible matter that I thought should not have been deserving of, from my layman's perspective, shouldn't have been. The players must also, you know, restrain themselves in the field, because you know that a certain slip, small slip, can cost your side. So let the players also be calm in the field and just do the work of delivering the goals and not conceding. They did so well in the first half, but they had to open up, and that's what really created.
But if you were, I would have asked, is it possible to go get some messages before we link up to Studio 5? I'll find out. Because at the end of the day, we want to be sure that the Black Stars are ready for the next game against South Korea. As it stands, we are bottom of the group, because Portugal obviously up there with 3 points. South Korea and Uruguay 0-0 at full time, so sharing 1 point apiece. Then there's us with 2 goals at 0 points.
Don't worry, the first shall be the last. The last shall become the first.
It has been preached.
We are very optimistic that will happen. But ladies, thank you so much. I wonder which other topics occupy your thoughts today, and let's just wrap up quickly so we can join Studio 5 in a minute.
Right,
so
in a minute.
Quickly.
The Harmattan, you know, in the northern areas causes a lot of problems, and supporting a local NGO, Maltiti Child Foundation. What they are doing is mobilizing, they've started their work, mobilizing children to register them on the health insurance, because they get a lot of respiratory illnesses and a lot of them are not on the health insurance. So please, if you can support, they are based in Tamale, support them. And if you also have a way of supporting any child in any of the 3 northern areas and savannah areas, kindly do, so that they can deal with the savannah, the Harmattan season more meaningfully.
A member of the Citizens Coalition and also a development communication specialist. Thank you so much for making the time. Akosia Hansen, artistic activist, writer and creator of the graphic novel series, and she is a queen of nighttime radio. Ladies, thank you so much for making this very early start to our breakfast morning. We're going over now to Studio 5 for our World Cup updates. Our